I know some of you have animals, and I know some of you don't. We do not currently have animals at our house, but we have in the past. And an incident happened with me recently that got me thinking about animals, and so it's the result of this. This is the result of it. And I started thinking about Christianity and animals. Now, Christianity as it exists today is what we would call an anthrocentric religion. And that means it's primarily concerned with people. The versions of Christianity we're familiar with were not really concerned with the earth, with the environment, with the natural world, or with animals. They just wasn't concerned with it. It was all about people. So what is Christianity's view of animals? After all, we share planet Earth with a number of different animals. Some animals are a nuisance, like rats and squirrels. We've got one at our house that every time I open the back door, it knows I'm coming out with a gun. And you can't get near it. I've been trying to shoot that thing for 3 months. You can't get near it. Some animals are friends, like cats and dogs. Other animals are a danger to us, like bears and mountain lions. Now, throughout known human history, people have seen at least some animals as essential. It was not until around the time of World War II that tractors came into general use on farms. Before that, for all of human history that we know of, virtually all farming was done with animal power: horses, oxen, donkeys, and mules. So for the great majority of human history, we depended on animals to help us produce food. And of course, animals themselves are a major source of food. Cows, chickens, and pigs, goats, sheep, all provide sources of food worldwide. And it's safe to say that without using animals as food sources, the world population could not sustain itself. Until the 20th century, animals were a main source of transportation. Horses and mules, camels, donkeys, oxen provided the power to transport people and the things people need from place to place. Animals are widely used in research, from disease and pharmaceutical research to cosmetic research. This was surprising to me, but in a given year, 690,000 guinea pigs, rabbits, and hamsters, 161,000 farm animals, 70,000 dogs, 49,000 monkeys, 22,000 cats, and 80 million mice and rats are used in various forms of research. Many of these animals suffer horrible pain and get in awful shape before they finally die. 9.4 billion, that's billion, broiler chickens are raised in the United States every year. These chickens are bred and fed to grow fast, and they live their short lives packed together in broiler houses. In addition, there are approximately 380 egg-laying chickens in the United States, and they normally live in wire cages. There are approximately 95 million beef cattle, 74 million hogs, and 5.2 million sheep. There was a lot of animals. I didn't even know there was that many of them. That's a tremendous number. Now, a lot of times we tend to think of animals as mindless biological machines. Now, I used to have chickens, and I can tell you that each hen had its own personality and its own behavioral characteristics. Each was an individual. And chickens have more thought processes that are sophisticated than I ever thought. I had a rooster. It was wintertime and the water was frozen. He would jump up to where the water bowl was and he would hoot at me until I came over there and changed that water, dumped the ice out and put water in I used to work with horses, and I found horses are very perceptive about sensing a person's personality traits. They have almost a sixth sense that allows them to feel the personality of a person. Animals are much more complex than we think. Studies have shown that animals have emotional and cognitive processes similar to human beings, although not as complex. They feel pain, they feel stress, anxiety, grief, despair, and loneliness. Now, the Bible does not contain a lot about animals. They are in there, but there is not a lot in the Bible about animals. But it does contain some things that make it clear that if you look closely, although the Bible is anthrocentric, animals in the natural world are not ignored. Now, in biblical times, animals were seen often as utilitarian things, just as was the case here in the United States until just about 100 years ago. They were used as a source of farm power. They were used as a source of transportation. They were used as a source of food. They were used as a source of clothing. Now, in Genesis chapter 9, God tells Noah and his sons, "Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you." And this is seen as the biblical basis that Christians can eat meat, that we don't have to be vegetarians. In Psalm 50, God says, "Every beast of the forest is mine, and the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know all the birds of the mountains, and the wild beasts of the field are mine." Jesus himself said, "Not a sparrow falls without your Father." And these passages are interpreted to mean that God cares about animals. From Psalm 104 we hear, "God sends the springs into the valleys, they flow among the hills. They give drink to every beast of the field. The wild donkeys quench their thirst. By them the birds of the heavens have their home. They sing among the branches. He waters the hills from his upper chambers. He causes the grass to grow for the cattle and vegetation for the service of man, that he may bring forth food from the earth." So God provides specific habitats with food, water, and shelter for animals. In the Old Testament book of Hosea, in chapter 2, we see an example of how God's promises for the future also include not only human beings, but all living things. "In that day I will make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field, with the birds of the air, and with the creeping things of the ground. Bow and sword of battle I will shatter from the earth. I will make them lie down safely. I will betroth you to me forever, in righteousness and justice, in loving kindness and mercy. I will betroth you to me in faithfulness." The same is echoed in the New Testament book of Romans. "The creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of decay into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pains together until now." You see, God's promise for salvation includes not just human beings, but everything. The Bible contains things that indicate that God cares about the welfare of animals. From Exodus we hear, 6 days shall you do your work, and on the 7th day you shall rest, that your ox and your donkey may rest. And so God provides a provision of rest for farm animals. It says, 6 years you shall sow your land and gather its produce. The 7th year you shall let it rest and lie fallow, that the poor of the people may eat, and what they leave the beasts of the field may eat. This is a provision of food to animals. Proverbs chapter 12 says, a righteous man regards the life of his animal. Now there is one major biblical narrative with an animal in it. It's from the Old Testament book of Numbers. It involves a man named Balaam. The situation was that the Hebrews had left Egypt, were wandering around in the wilderness, and they camped near a place called Moab. The people in Moab were afraid of the Hebrews, afraid of what they might do. So the king sent for a man named Balaam to come and put a curse on the Hebrews. He wanted Balaam to curse the Hebrews so they wouldn't bother him. So he sent messengers to Balaam and he said, I want you to come and curse these people. And Balaam said, well, I'll get back to you. I'll ask God what he wants me to do and I'll get back to you. So that night, God went to Balaam and said, no, you can't go. I don't want you to go. So Balaam sent word to the messenger, said, I can't go. So they went back to the king and they told him that. He said, well, go ask him again. And so they went back and asked him again, and he said, well, I'll let you know tomorrow. I'll have to ask God and see what God says. So that night God says, well, you can go, but when you get there, you can't do anything that I don't tell you to do. So he got up the next morning and he said, well, I'm going with you. So it said he saddled up his donkey and he set off with these people with the king to go to the king. But for some reason, God apparently changed his mind because God got mad at him. And God sent a sword, an angel with a sword to stand in the way of the road. Now Balaam and the king's men didn't see that angel with the sword, but Balaam's donkey did. And so when he saw that thing, it turned and went off the road into a field. So Balaam hit the donkey, get back up on the road. So it got back up there. And the angel was there again with the sword. And the donkey saw it again. And this time, trying to get away from it, she pushed Balaam up against the wall and hurt his leg. He hit her again. They kept going down the road a little farther. The donkey saw the angel with the sword again. This time she laid down on top of Balaam. And he got his staff and started beating her. And so the donkey turned around and said, what have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times? And Balaam said, because you mocked me. He said, I wish I had a sword. I'd kill you right here. And the donkey said, am I not your donkey on which you have ridden ever since I became yours? Have I ever done this to you? And Balaam answered, no. And then it says that the Lord opened Balaam's eyes and he saw the angel with the sword. He fell on his face. And the angel said, why'd you hit your donkey? After all, you know, if that donkey hadn't turned you away, I'd have to kill you right there on the road. And Balaam said, well, I know I've sinned, so I'll go back home. And the angel said, no, go on with them. So they went on. Now, admittedly, this is a strange episode. It's strange not only that a donkey is talking, but there appears to be some confusion here on God's part. First, God tells him not to go. Then he tells him to go. Then when he goes, God gets mad at him and tries to kill him. Then when he says, well, I'm going back home, God says, no, go. So it's hard to know what kind of sense to make out of this. It's also interesting that when the donkey speaks, it's not treated as anything unusual. You know, here's Balaam laying there hitting the donkey, and the donkey says, quit hitting me. Well, what would you do? I mean, but it didn't seem out of the ordinary or anything. It is a strange episode. But this is the only episode in the Bible where an animal plays a large part. So from what we've seen from the Bible, is that although the Bible, for the most part, is anthrocentric, centered on people, there is enough in the Bible for us to glean that God actually does care about animals. The Bible does not see animals as disposable creatures just to serve our interests with no concern for their welfare. Now, in my mind, I don't know what part animals play in the grand scheme of things. I don't know what their spiritual position is. It's something that this side of heaven will remain a mystery to us. One thing does stand out to me, though, animals have a much harder life than we do. You know, for the most part, animals are part of the food chain. Larger animals survive by killing and eating smaller animals. And if you're an animal like a rabbit or something like that, you're at the bottom of the food chain, and chances are your life is going to end by you being eaten by something else. Your life will end in horror and terror as you are ripped apart and consumed alive. If you thought that's how your life was going to end up, how would you think? I mean, does God want it to be that way? Does God want rabbits ripped apart by bobcats? I don't believe he does. Because if you look in the Bible at the visions of the end times, where things are set right, and things are finally the way God wants them to be, that is no longer part of things. From the book of Isaiah we hear, the wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the young goat, the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young ones shall lie down together, the lion shall eat straw like the ox, the nursing child shall play by the cobra's hole, and the weaned child shall put his hand in the viper's den. They shall not hurt nor destroy in my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. You see, salvation is not just for human beings, it's for all of creation. That tells us that the way things are now is not the way God wants them to be. I've always thought it is a mistake to look at salvation as just people getting their sins forgiven so they go to heaven when they die. Salvation is for the universe, the whole of creation. Salvation means that the grip of evil that is evident over all the universe will one day be broken, and the goodness of God will reign instead of evil. And salvation is for all, even for animals. Remember, as the Apostle Paul wrote, they are groaning to be released from the bondage to evil in which all life lives. Even they are the recipients of the salvation won by Jesus. Sometimes I think God uses events to speak to us and we don't know exactly the message that we're supposed to get at that time, and I still don't know. But I think that happened to me recently, and this is what actually prompted this topic. Now, our neighbor has a small restaurant supply business. I'm down there a lot. One day a dog appeared down there. It wasn't a large dog. Looks more like a hound dog mix or something. It wasn't large. You know, since we live where we do, we get a lot of cats and dogs set out. This is certainly not the first that's appeared in. If somebody wants to get rid of something, just bring it up there and let it out. And this was really cruel because this was back when it was so cold. And this little dog maybe weighed 15, 20 pounds, something like that. And it would just stand there looking at the side door. And somebody came out, it would back off and run away. It wouldn't let anybody get near it. You'd just tuck its tail and back off. So we started feeding it. It started feeling at home. The next morning when I got down there, it came up to me and started smelling of me, and I talked to it. Of course, I fed it, gave it some water, and it got used to being there, and it wasn't scared of people anymore. It started laying beside the door, beside the front door. I guess it started thinking of the place as home. And that night I got up some food for it. I didn't have any dog food, so I thought, well, I had some Vienna sausage. And I got a couple of cans of Vienna sausage to give it for breakfast the next morning. And Wanda got it out a bowl that we could use for a water bowl. Now, that later in the day, the next day, I planned to go to Falston and get some food in a dog bowl. That would have been on Friday. And then I said, okay, on Saturday, I'm going to go down there to that pet store down there near Walmart and get it some kind of dog house and a dog bed to put the lean-to back there behind that building so he'd have a place to sleep. But all evening, that Thursday evening, I worried about that dog. There's bears, there's coyotes, bobcats, and foxes around. And a little dog like that has no chance against something like that. And I was scared to death something to get that dog. So I studied over the situation around our house, and we really don't have anywhere to put a dog. We don't have anywhere to put a dog to keep it safe at night. And I was figuring about how I could bring that dog home and have it a place where it could be safe at night. There's really no way to fence in our backyard because you have to get up there into the driveway. But I just was worried to death about that dog. And the next morning, I had its Vienna sausage and its water and everything it took down there. I got down there and wasn't down there. And I called it, whistled for it, but nothing. The little dog didn't come, and I about panicked. So I went in. And they said that a woman who lives a couple miles away had come by the afternoon before and seen that dog and wanted it. Now this woman's nice. She's younger. She and her husband have 2 small children, and she has a fenced-in backyard. Perfect place for that dog. So the dog got a good home with a fenced-in backyard and got children to play with it. I was really surprised, though, at how fast I got attached to that dog. Now, I like dogs okay, but I've never really been a dog person. I had a dog when I was growing up, but one that I used to have cats, so I guess we're more cat people, but I like dogs too. I really got attached to that dog. And somebody else had seen that woman that Saturday in the parking lot of Honey's and said that her 2 children and that dog were sitting in the back seat. They took it up there to the Bell Veterinary Clinic to get its shots and all. And so there was a little dog sitting there with their little children. So it was happy. But I got attached to that little dog. And a verse from Hebrews popped in my mind. From the New King James it says, "Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by so doing some have unwittingly entertained angels." Now from the King James it's like this, "Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares." I like that. Now obviously the book of Hebrews thought that sometimes angels took the form of people, and we never know it. So is it completely out of bounds then to consider that they might take the form of a little dog? Hebrews goes on to say, "Remember them that are in bonds, as bound with them, and them which suffer adversity, as being yourselves also in the body." This little dog had also suffered adversity. It had been set out in a strange place. It didn't know what to do. It was freezing cold. But through the help of big-hearted people, plus a little luck in avoiding being caught by coyotes and foxes, things worked out very well for that little dog. I must admit, though, that although I know that a young family with children in a fenced-in yard is a better home for that little dog than one that I could have given it. And although the vet told me it was probably only about 8 months old, and I know that had one and I got that dog, it would have probably outlived us. There's still a part of me that would like to have had that little dog. And I still wonder how it's doing. I don't know what all this represents. But I do think that God moves in mysterious ways and speaks to us in mysterious ways and opens our eyes to things when we least expect it. And maybe in ways we do not expect. And I think this incident has made me open to considering that maybe there's a lot more to animals than we think.